Welcome to Bostic Health, where we challenge the business of healthcare and explore bold ideas that drive meaningful change. Each week, we bring you candid conversations with top experts, innovators, and leaders, exploring the latest trends and technologies shaping the future of healthcare. Join us and be part of the conversation in transforming healthcare.
Hey everyone, I'm Lisa Varga. Welcome to Bostic Health, and we're doing something a little different today. I am actually interviewing the host of Bostic Health, Mr. Bradley Bostic himself. And how's it feel to be in the hot seat?
It's a lot different, Lisa. I feel a lot less comfortable than I do when I'm talking to other people and asking them about their story. But really glad to be here and excited to talk about some of my experiences.
You're going to do great. I have complete faith in you.
Thank you.
Let's just start it off with something easy. Give us a little bit about your background.
Sure. Well, I won't go back to 1974 in Brookings, South Dakota, but my business background really started when I was observing my dad growing up, who was a banker. So he worked with a lot of entrepreneurs, including in healthcare, but in all kinds of different industries. And it really lit the fuse for me, wanting to be an entrepreneur, wanting to create something out of nothing and build things based on my ideas. And like any banker, he was always analyzing for risk and creditworthiness. And so I would talk to my dad about different ideas, and he would generally tell me all the ways that they would fail. And so it I think really helped improve my ability to think about the way that risk and capital play together, and the way that, look, everybody has ideas, but unless you bring the right elements together, you aren't going to succeed. And I learned a ton from just seeing and hearing, my dad talk about business, advancing into where I ended up going to Indiana University, where I had the opportunity to play on the football team, which is pretty cool nowadays since we're 10-0.
Yeah.
I like to point that out.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
All you want. They have earned that.
10-0. I mean, it's first time ever. But anyway, I learned a ton going through that experience about time management and about just really having to endure, a pretty challenging schedule and still covering all your bases with grades. And then ended up starting my first startup, which was a e-commerce business plan for selling college textbooks on the internet, which was back in the mid-90s. So that was novel at that time. I mean, back then there was this little startup called Amazon selling, all kinds of different texts.
I've heard of them.
Different books. Yeah, they've become pretty big. So that's sort of my story from, an early age up until I started getting more directly engaged in business. And my dad, had a lot of influence on that.
What made you get into healthcare? Or have you always been in healthcare? Where'd you, I guess, tell us something about the companies that you started back then, and then up to bring us currently to the companies you have now?
Sure, yeah. So the healthcare part, I had some mentors that were doctors and would talk about different facets of the healthcare system. And I looked at the fact that in my e-commerce business plan, it was all about creating something that was really tailored to the customer's experience and making it so that it was easy for them to do business with our company. And when I started to look at healthcare, I realized that it was not that way. Healthcare was designed more in the reverse, where it was designed for the people who are giving the care to document and mainly to be able to code and bill for things. Not really with respect to how can the experience be great for the patient. Even just the fact that every single time you go to the doctor, you fill out the same form, you walk across the street, fill out that same form again, and all it says is who you are and what your insurance is. I just thought, how can this not be something that would be more rational? And so right out of the Indiana University Business School, the Kelley School of Business, where I studied business with a computer information systems concentration, I got a job at Ernst & Young. And I had been an entrepreneur, wanted to be an entrepreneur, but my dad encouraged me to get a kind of a real job. And so I did that, which lasted about 9 months. But I learned a ton and met a lot of great people, some of whom I still stay in touch with. But while I was there, I started getting involved with some things in the healthcare world and started seeing how healthcare operated in more detail, and got into the interoperability side of healthcare. So meaning how do you bring data together? How do you connect these different databases in a way that creates a more comprehensive record? And then what you could do with that. And I thought, well, gosh, this is a huge opportunity, because it just makes sense that healthcare leaders would want to have a better system for working with patients and making them healthier and ultimately, achieving a better financial outcome somehow as a result. And about that time, my mom actually got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, colon cancer. And so I was, a young professional and getting involved in my career, and I saw her go through what ended up, not being an outcome that anybody would want. She passed away after less than a year of being diagnosed, and should have proactively been getting colonoscopies. Never really was recommended to do that, that I was aware of, by her physician, and she was otherwise really healthy. And I saw the way that healthcare was so disjointed from a patient's perspective. And a patient's perspective where it was life or death. And I'll never forget when her first line surgery and treatments started to fail, and it was like, what's next? And she was a fighter. Like, she wanted to do everything she could. And the method for trying to find a clinical trial or something that could help her was basically a couple of doctors who were nice enough to call some of their buddies around the country and hope they could find something. So there was no connection between people who were in a position of needing something more and the different experimental treatments and trials. So that really created this new passion for me to want to commit my career to healthcare. So I started focusing in on what I could do to make healthcare better, and really leaned into this whole, how do you integrate data better? Fast forward to 2017, and I have been involved with a lot of companies I've built and started, ranging from teleradiology to interoperability and everything in between, and was involved with a genomics laboratory business. And that's really where I started to see that the most powerful data set across all of healthcare was laboratory data, but people weren't really utilizing that in a very high impact way. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up starting this new concept that I called at the time Health Cloud One. And Health Cloud One was the idea of being able to extract all this gold from laboratory data that could help patients get diagnosed more effectively, help them get treated more effectively, and ultimately, help them live a healthier life that wasn't inside the healthcare system. But interestingly, and quite, it was a very disconcerting moment when I was talking to a healthcare executive. It was actually a CFO of a big health system. And I was explaining, this was very early in my career, but this was like my PhD in how healthcare works. I said, hey, we can put in place a system that will ensure people get diagnosed faster and get treated faster so they can get home with their families and be living, happy lives outside of the healthcare system. And she looked at me and said, what will that do to my revenue if that type of system is in place? Because we get paid for every healthcare event. And I just was shocked. I had gone into this assuming that healthcare leaders would be focused on how they could be proactive and preventative. And in reality, this person who was CFO of a major health system was concerned with making sure her revenue was what it needed to be. So that was a moment where I realized you've got to ensure that the economic model is there to support the innovation that you want to provide. It wasn't about logic or what was rational or even what was right for the patient. It was about what was going to boost the bottom line, which is fair. If there's no margin, there's no mission. And if you look at the traditional healthcare payment model in the United States and in other countries, which is called fee-for-service, under fee-for-service, it's every event, whether it's a test that's run or a procedure that's done or a visit to the doctor, that's what rings the cash register. And so incentive drives behavior. And a really good example of how this works in kind of the perverse incentives within healthcare and fee-for-service is the example where somebody gets admitted to the hospital with pneumonia, and they're, not feeling well. They have a lot of symptoms happening, but generally they have just sort of a low grade fever. And a couple of days go by, they're still hospitalized, and they spike a really high fever. You run the tests on them, and you find out that they have a bacteria in their blood, a positive blood culture, and they got it in the hospital. It's a hospital-acquired infection. But under fee-for-service models, at one point, and this has gotten better, where we actually measure quality and hospital-acquired infections are not rewarded. But at one point back in that time, you would actually get paid to treat that patient for the infection that you gave them. So you might get paid $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 treating a patient that you gave an infection to. So while nobody was intentionally giving you an infection, the fact that you would get rewarded financially to treat that it's a real problem. And so thankfully, and I'm an abundance oriented person. I'm not a doomsday conspiracy theorist. That was just what happened. I'd say an unintended consequence of the fee-for-service model when not managed effectively. But today, what's happening that's really fueling this vision that I started out with early in my career is this move to what's called value-based care. And in value-based care, doctors, primary care doctors, are set up as really the coordinators of an individual's care, and they're rewarded with really what equates to a bonus for keeping people healthier, for saving money from the healthcare system. And so that creates the right kind of alignment between the insurance payer and the provider, and it's called value-based care. So going way back to the early days of my career, the concept of value-based care existed back then. But in healthcare, it takes a long time to move things forward. And you have to basically be plugged in at the right place and the right time to unlock the value. And you have to align the business and innovation with the economic model that will move the needle. And if you recall, when I was talking about my early career, I wanted to bring innovative solutions that would improve outcomes, that would help patients, that would help them live better lives. You say outcomes, you just mean I wanted people to live better lives. I wanted them to not be sick. That was kind of the end goal.
Back to your mom.
Okay, going back to my mom.
Yeah.
Ideally, she would have not have been sick. There would have been a better way that would have, she'd still be here. Right. And so that really fueled me. But when I realized that fee-for-service didn't have the right incentive model to support the kind of vision I had to go on this odyssey of doing things that fit within fee-for-service. But back in 2017, I had HC1 up and going, and it was growing, and started to realize there were other areas of data outside a laboratory where you could also mine insights that could also generate value in a way that followed that same kind of recipe. And so we formed Health Cloud Capital, myself and a partner. And Health Cloud Capital's entire focus is on bringing the capital to bear for the businesses that we're building that mine insights from healthcare data that otherwise are left untapped, that are going to immediately impact outcomes. They're going to help patients and also align with the economics to boost the bottom line. And I am an operator first and an investor second. And I operate HC1 on a daily basis. And my passion really is in ensuring that every single patient gets the optimal testing and the optimal kind of treatment for whatever they're going through, and ultimately getting to where we can identify from all these lab signals where you've got people who can be proactively managed so that they don't end up with some really terrible healthcare outcome. Mm-hmm. And good news, what we do both improves outcomes for patients and boosts the bottom line for the healthcare system.
That is good news.
It's great news. And that wasn't possible, 20 some years ago. Right. There's also this proliferation of compute with the cloud that's secure, and the ability to use artificial intelligence to really power up a higher level of impact for every single caregiver, and giving patients the kind of tools that they need to better manage their own care. So I truly feel like I'm part of this golden era in healthcare, that I could not have been luckier And that also makes me feel like every day when I wake up, I have an obligation to do these things that can impact the lives of millions of people. And it's super inspiring that that's what I get to do every day.
It's so great. And the fact that you are doing that, we need that right now. The healthcare system is broken, which is one of the reasons why you started Bostic Health, this podcast, to enlighten people and educate them and bring on some of the greatest experts in their field to talk about what can we do to make the healthcare system better. But before we get into the podcast, so you have Health Cloud Capital, HC1 Plus Acumen. Do you want to talk about that a little bit and ThreeAware?
Sure. Yeah. So within our Health Cloud Capital family of companies, we've got 3 operating businesses that are all in this world of making healthcare better through data insights. And HC1 is the business it's the longest standing, most mature company. We are connected to a vast number of healthcare systems and labs to drive this sort of insight to help drive better diagnostics. And it encompasses about 100 million patients and tens of billions of actual lab result values. And we're running these smart algorithms that effectively are like having a concierge level focus on every single person's testing. Like imagine if you had an army of unlimited concierges looking at your testing and making sure that you're getting the right testing, and then ultimately making sure that other aspects of your healthcare journey were optimized when you go from a diagnostic test result to some type of process to manage that. So for example, the pregnant mother who is identified as having anemia and can be treated proactively by the healthcare system, by the Women's Health Center, to ensure that they are their iron levels are addressed so that they are healthy, their baby's healthy. Like these are things that lab information allows you to engage upon, but you need to be proactive about it. We recently combined through an acquisition of a company called Acumen. They have some of the leading experts in the world and some of the best technology in the world for optimizing the value of the lab. So now we're going into healthcare systems and working with health plans and working with major independent commercial labs to make the lab a strategic asset that affects the quality of care and outcomes across the entire continuum of care, and also boosts the bottom line by driving healthy growth, where you're doing the right kind of testing that is driving better outcomes, and ultimately for the healthcare system, which, look, where there's no margin, there's no mission, they need to make a profit. And when they put that to good use, or have a positive bottom line, I should say, because many of these are nonprofit, but they reinvest the dollars into better care, we help enable that through our HC1 plus Acumen solution. So that's the company I lead day to day.
Yeah. People don't realize how important lab testing is. Yeah. Progress starts here.
Right.
It's your tagline.
Yeah. Healthcare progress starts here with HC1 plus Acumen. Yeah. And healthcare progress starts specifically with actionable lab data. And you're right. It's whether you're sick, healthy, or somewhere in between, you are getting tested by a lab. And typically people think about it as the uncomfortable part of their appointment, where they get the prick in the arm. And but in reality, if you're doing the right testing for people, you can help do them a lot of good. Now, that recipe of going into these messy data sets and using technology to organize and refine and enrich that to identify these signals is what we do with ThreeAware as well. ThreeAware is focused on real-world evidence for medical device manufacturers. What that means is there's information that's locked in these electronic health records that will tell you the story of whether a medical device is helping or hurting a patient, or whether or not there are additional ways to leverage a medical device other than what it was originally intended for that can help more patients, which is called label expansion. But to figure that out historically has taken a ton of consulting work and a lot of painstaking custom agreements with various healthcare providers. It just has it's been a glacial pace. But because of some of the risks of having a medical device not perform as intended and harming patients, but not realizing it for a long time because of the lack of this instrumentation to see the information of real world evidence. The regulators like FDA and EU MDR in Europe have started to say, we want these medical device companies to report out to us on an ongoing basis with details of how well their device is performing. And so seeing this need, we started a business under the Health Cloud Capital umbrella that uses artificial intelligence and a thing called natural language understanding to mine the information from the physician's notes and connect in exactly which medical devices are being used. So in real time, you can see whether you have an issue that needs to be addressed with a device or whether you have a device that's working really well that we should use more of. And that is incredibly valuable to the actual medical device companies who are under a lot of pressure from a margin perspective because things have gotten more expensive, supply chains have gotten more difficult to manage, and they're looking for every possible way to advance medical devices without having to put too much cost burden on that process. So think about the easy button that you can just type in what your device is if you're a manufacturer of medical devices, like a Medtronic or a Stryker, and instantly when you put in that device, it comes up and says, we have 372 patients that are in the data set. They're not identified. These are all just basically, more demographic information. There's no connection to an actual individual, but there's a connection to the device and the specific situation and identification of any adverse events or any ways that you can apply that device to do more good. It's an incredible company. And while I'm at it, I'll share our third company we have under the umbrella, which is called DecisionRx. This business was really born out of the awareness that when people are diagnosed effectively through the kinds of things we do at HC1, they weren't always getting the best medications. They still aren't. And so DecisionRx was created to work with the actual health insurance companies, the health plans that are implementing value-based care to make sure every patient, especially the high-risk patients, are on the ideal medications, all the way down to ensuring that they're on the medications that fit best with their genetics. So it's a really comprehensive way to, again, have the equivalent of a focused concierge pharmacist in this case. Mm-hmm. And think about your parents or your relatives, or I know you've had your own family members who have gone through these difficult healthcare journeys. Knowing without any doubt that they're on the optimal medications is a really powerful thing.
So important.
And it makes sure that they're healthy sooner. They get back out into the world living their lives sooner, or they manage whatever conditions they have. So those are really the three companies we have in our portfolio. We're very focused. We have amazing leaders in ThreeAware and DecisionRx that are building those businesses. And this overall vision that I've had since early in my career to impact healthcare positively for millions of people, seeing that come to life is just incredibly exciting.
First of all, thank you for doing what you do, because we all need this. You have your hand in so many things. What is next for you, or what would you say, let's just go a year from now? What are your goals, and what would you like to see happen, or what would you like to see different?
Well, look, focus is everything. And so while I have been able to launch a lot of ventures that are doing a lot of good, my day job is building HC1. And I have outstanding executives that run the other two portfolio companies. I'm there for them as chairman of the board to be supportive. And there's a lot of, this is an overused word, but a lot of synergy between the companies, because the common thread is we're all working with healthcare systems and healthcare plans, insurance companies, medical device companies, electronic health records. So each company gains this incredible, it's like an ecosystem, we have that allows us to go further faster by supporting these initiatives through these relationships that we have. So it's a pretty cool rising tide effect that we're experiencing. And one of my major objectives is to ensure that while we're Midwest and we like to be very humble and just putting our heads down and working is the way we operate, you want to be the most successful company nobody's ever heard of in many respects, or the most successful person nobody's ever heard of. The problem with that model is, especially in innovation, you just are limited in what you can accomplish if you aren't more visible. And so I am working every day to create that platform and that megaphone that gets this message out that this is a recipe that works to advance healthcare, and that out of Indianapolis, which is where we're headquartered, with team members all across the country with all these companies, we're literally transforming health and well-being for millions of people every single day, every single week, every single year in and year out. And we need to make sure the world knows about that.
I love that. And now we can talk about Bostic Health, your podcast. And that's exactly what we're doing here, what you're doing. And here's your platform. What do you need to say? What do you need people to learn? What are we going to tell them?
So one of my friends and business partners who has been on the podcast, Simon Arkell, who's a fantastic entrepreneur and innovator. I would bet on Simon 10 out of 10 times, no matter what he sets his mind to, which one of those things was being an Olympic pole vaulter. So you have to have a certain level of persistence to get to that point. But when I let Simon know I was launching the podcast and invited him to be on it, he accepted. And then he texted me this little infographic that had two trend lines overlapping. And one of them kind of went up and went kind of a little bit flat and up and to the right. The other one was sort of up and down and up and down and up and down. And then it kind of took off and it surpassed the flatter trend line. And the flatter trend line was for like large company career executive. And it was sort of this smooth and steady. And the other one was an entrepreneur. And as the line went up and down, it was next to the line, it said, I suck, I suck, I suck, I suck. And then when it intersected and surpassed the other trend line, all of a sudden it said, I need a podcast.
You know what? That is,
which is so funny.
Spot on.
And you know, and I was like, well, it's funny because I never would have thought I would have a podcast. I was always kind of that heads down, show up at the office every day, do my job. But when I started realizing two things were happening that I needed to help solve and nobody else was going to solve it for us, because, you know, partially where we're located in the country, there's so much good about the Midwest. So many great people that outwork anybody. They're smart. We know healthcare better than anybody. I absolutely believe that. But we do not have a built-in megaphone to let the world know that, like the Valley has, or like Boston is developed for med tech and biotech, or certain areas within like Austin has become a hub, and New York, and, you know, Chicago has some of that. But Indianapolis, Indiana, really just doesn't have that megaphone. And so we are creating that through this podcast. But the other part is innovation is unlocked in healthcare when you have smart people and technology that matches with an economic engine. And I'm having conversations, I have been having conversations for years, every single day with smart, bold leaders who have these keys or these secrets to how you can unlock that combination of innovation and business success that's fueled by an economic engine. And I thought, gosh, I'm having these conversations anyway. Why not do a podcast where we're having the conversation,
right,
but we can share it with everybody else? So it's really about community. And that's, to me, like at this stage of my journey, every day what I care about is the community that I'm part of. I want to be around energizing people who are boosting each other up, who are looking to accomplish something great, who have something to bring to that conversation because for the right reasons, you know, and that's the community that we're building with Bostic Health. And the name also, which is kind of clever and funny, Lisa and I were brainstorming about what the name could be, and Lori Smith, who works with us. And, you know, like you do as you're brainstorming and throwing names around, you throw some silly things and some like kind of more benign, you know, descriptive things. And she sent over this Bostic, and I said, well, actually, that was my nickname. A couple people would call me that in college because that song was popular. Yeah. And, you know, it's obviously a different spelling, different meaning, but I thought, well, it's kind of catchy. Sure, let's do it. And she and Lori were both like, are you sure? And I was like, yeah, I think it's great. But it's working out and it's, you know, somewhat memorable. But I think at the end of the day, the people that we're able to have conversations with and the value that they can bring to the world, you know, I always thought about podcasts as it felt like kind of a self-promotion. And in reality, this is about the community of healthcare getting the word out, that we can innovate. We can make it better. Yes, there are challenges and obstacles. Yes, it's hard. And when you get to the end of the day and you look back in your life, though, you're going to be able to say, I made a difference. Like that's, I think, more than any of us can possibly ask for in life, is to know that you did something that mattered. And Bostic Health is that community to help people see the path to know how they can do that, whether they're an investor, a healthcare administrator, an entrepreneur, somebody who is a consultant into healthcare. Anybody who touches healthcare can come to be part of the Bostic Health community, to follow the podcast, to participate online when those are posted, to follow that on social, and also follow the newsletter we have now through LinkedIn, which basically gives a summary every week of the podcast that we do, and the quality of the conversation, and I think just the instructiveness of it to help advance the world of healthcare has far exceeded my expectations. And frankly, all I think about is, what would I want to listen to?
Yeah.
What would I want to learn? And those are the people that we're bringing on to Bostic Health to be part of this community.
I love it. I love that I could sit in my little producer chair in the back and all the stress and pressure is taken off of me, and I could put it all on you. And you're doing an incredible job. And when I sit back and listen to every guest that you have here, I am just blown away at the information, at how excited they are, how passionate they are. Everyone that you bring onto the show, they are just as passionate as you are. And you all have the same mission. You're providing solutions. And a lot of people will complain about healthcare, or they know something's wrong, but they don't know how to fix it. And that is what you're providing here: answers, solutions, ideas. And then Emily, she, brings in the whole legal aspect. So I really...
Yeah, legal and regulatory is huge. If you haven't seen the podcast, please follow it and check it out. But what Lisa's referring to is the verdict segment with Emily, who is a healthcare lawyer who focuses on regulatory. And so she'll come in and talk about some of the specific regulatory considerations as you go to launch these initiatives or execute on the business of healthcare, because there are lots of ways also that you can, do it in a way that isn't compliant. And that's the other component. It's the economics aligning with the business. And in there it needs to be aligned with the regulatory framework.
Yeah, it's great. If you could sum up Bostic Health in one word, what would it be?
It's hard to choose one word, but if I had to, I would choose right now, as we sit here, the word useful.
Ooh, that's good.
I listen to a lot of podcasts and I love them. I feel like I know the people who are really talented in this world. And it's the new way of consuming information that forms your perspective. It's the thing that's basically leapt right over any kind of broadcast media of the past. And it's pretty powerful. And in this case, useful is what I look for out of a podcast. I like it to be entertaining. I like the people to be interesting, but I also like to come away thinking I learned something. I learned something I can apply. Like just listening to a couple of people. I never loved talk radio because I just didn't like listening to a couple of people just kind of ramble and laugh at stuff that I just didn't learn anything.
Right.
And we like to every once in a while ramble and laugh. That's a part of it. But it's, with an eye toward, let's get to the substance though. Let's figure out the signal. And this word useful is particularly poignant for me because I grew up really looking up to this fellow everybody knows named Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yes.
Back when I was a football player, I wanted to be big and muscular like him, which never quite happened, but I did my best. And as I continued to watch how he would succeed at whatever he decided he would do and how resilient he was when there was adversity, that's just something that, it's so rare. Mm-hmm. And his book he recently published, back when I was younger, I read a book he had called The Education of a Bodybuilder. And it talked about really the focus and persistence and hard work it took for him to achieve his success at that part of his career, the kind of athletic part, if you will. But advancing into where he succeeded in everything else he had done, eventually he's become a bit reflective on his life and wrote this book called Be Useful. And he talks about his father, who was a military vet who had some really traumatic experiences in the military, came back with a lot of PTSD issues and was really tough on he and his brother. But he would say this phrase, be useful. No matter what you do, be useful.
I love it.
As long as you're useful, your life will work out. And I think that word useful is what we'd like to have people identify, with, and then also entertaining and kind of fun.
Yeah, great word and words. And maybe we need to give Arnold a call and see if maybe he would be a guest on Bostic Health with Bradley Bostic.
I would love to have Arnold. He has definitely been an idol, and one of my mentors and idols along the way was my dad's best friend while I was a young boy, was this guy named George Mickelson. And George was the governor of South Dakota. And while he was the governor, Arnold was leading the physical fitness initiative for the federal government.
Oh.
They had that Presidential Physical Fitness Award.
Remember.
And I'll never forget when George met Arnold, and Arnold gave him this jacket that had the physical fitness. It was basically kind of like a letterman's jacket, but I was like, that is the coolest thing. And George was a big, tall. He ended up passing away in a plane accident while he was governor. Actually, it was quite tragic, but he was a fantastic person, and his memory certainly lives on with me and his sons, who I'm close friends with, and my father. But it was kind of interesting because it was this sort of brush with the person who I had idolized, and I thought, how cool is that he's gone from being a bodybuilder into this role where he's helping to get young people involved with health and fitness. Yeah. So lots to say. I wasn't intending to talk this much about Arnold, but the be useful. Useful, I think, is a really key word. That if we all do that, and in healthcare we focus on that, we'll get a lot better at delivering outcomes and boosting the bottom line.
Right. And Arnold, he obviously impacted your life. And we hope that that's what you're going to do for some of your listeners. And you're going to say something, or you're going to have a guest on, and it's going to be useful to them. Yeah. And that's really your purpose here, is to just reach broader audiences worldwide and just share with them the information that you're...
There's no doubt. There's no doubt. As I've gotten to this stage of my career and realize I have a day one mentality where every day I feel like it's the first day. We're just getting started. We're just getting started. And part of what I like to do is work with people who are also going at their lives and their careers with that day one mentality. And I have actually started mentoring some promising young students that have interned for our companies. And I just get so excited about the future because, there's a benefit of wisdom and experience, but there's also a benefit of being fresh. And I have another partner I've worked with for years, who's on one of my boards, who refers to it as they're like these soft balls of clay. They can kind of be shaped still, and it's the future is bright. There's no doubt in my mind, and I want more people to be able to benefit from these experiences that I've had. And frankly, I've learned through the School of Hard Knocks. I didn't really have a business-minded mentor who showed me how to do it. I had my dad, who was a banker who ran big companies, and could talk to me about some of the keys of the fundamentals of a business, but not how do you go start from nothing and build something. Outside of that, I really just had people saying, hey, you can do it, but I had to figure out what the it was. And so to the extent I can help people that are building do it faster and better by benefiting from the experiences that I've had, including the failures that I've been through and the successes that I've had, that's better for everybody. So hopefully Bostic Health can help people get to where they want to go faster, and much, much faster than I have.
I love it. It's been fun. You made it. We're finished with the interview.
Well, gosh, that was great.
Yeah, you did Bostic.
Thank you. I appreciate that. No, I love our team that we have here, and it's been really fun to get the word out like we have. Yeah. And hey, it's day one again, so let's keep it going.
Well, since this is Bostic Health with Bradley Bostic, it's only fit to have Bradley Bostic close us out today. So whatever you'd like to say, leave your audience with.
Well, thank you all for following, and most importantly, thank you all for your commitment to being the difference that we all want to see in the healthcare system, because I think together we can make it this future where we all live longer, healthier lives, and where our family members and our friends benefit from this personalized approach that takes advantage of all technology has to offer, but as importantly, that allows our caregivers, the talented physicians and clinicians that are involved with our care make it so that they can all operate at the top possible level of their skill. So with that, look forward to seeing you on our next episode of Bostic Health. Have a great day.